Okay, this video is going to be over Lab Practical 1 content, exercise 2 material. It's actually exercise like 2B because it's going to be over the uh, organs and organ systems. I'm sorry, 2A, because it's going to be over organs and organ systems. So you should have a labeling handout that comes along with it. And this is what it looks like. So it's a labeling handout. You should have picked that up in class. And it's about, looking down here, it looks like about 7 pages. So we're going to start on page 1. So if you haven't gotten that, go ahead and find that document, pause the video, and then come back and turn that on as soon as you find that. This right here, again, this is the handout that you got in class as well. It tells you what you need to know out of exercise 2, which is going to be the first thing we're going to talk about. This is going to be a video in and of itself. Is going to be organs and organ systems. Then we're going to have one over body cavities, and then I'll make another video over the membranes, and then the last video over abdominal regions and quadrants. So again, the first thing we're going to take a look at is organs and organ systems, and that's going to be set A. Now, before we kind of get started, you do need to know what an organ is. And this is also going along a lot with lecture. So an organ is a group of tissues performing a common function. So that's the definition of an organ. And there's various organs over here in the picture off to the right. What is an organ system? Now, again, this is kind of what we're talking about here. An organ system is a group of organs all performing a similar function. So, for example, I just put the digestive system on here because that's the one you're probably most familiar with. The digestive system contains the organs, mouth, liver, gallbladder, appendix. All of these are part of the digestive system, and they all help process food, keeping the good stuff and getting rid of the bad stuff. That's really kind of the job of the digestive system there. This is also a handout that you picked up in class for exercise 2. It gives you a list of all of the 11 organ systems. The first statement is telling you the function. So, for instance, the function of the cardiovascular system is to transport nutrients. Its chemical messengers are being transported, gases are being transported, waste are being transported. And then it also, in italics underneath of that, gives you the major organs involved in the cardiovascular system, which would be heart and blood vessels. And you can do that for each of the individual organ systems. So we're on page 1 of the labeling handout. So what you've got here is this image is on the labeling handout, and this is a bigger picture so you can kind of see what the words are, because I know it's kind of small on that one page there. Sorry, I was just kind of blowing it up there on my other screen. This one right here, which is letter A on your labeling handout, you've got yellow. Now, anytime you see yellow on a model, that's representing the nervous system. So that's going to include organs such as the brain, spinal cord, and peripheral nerves. The job of the nervous system is to control the body using electrical signals, helping maintain what's called homeostasis. I know you haven't maybe learned that word yet because that's in lecture, but bottom line is there are 2 organ systems in the body that are involved in maintaining homeostasis, controlling the rest of the body. One of them is the nervous system, and it does so through the use of electrical signals. The other one is also going to control the body to maintain homeostasis, but it's not going to use electrical signals to do it. It's going to use something else. We'll talk about that in a minute. Letter B on your handout is talking about the respiratory system. So it includes organs such as the nasal passage, the trachea, and the lungs, and it's involved in gas exchange. The next one, letter C on your labeling handout, now you can't tell again because it's black and white, is red and blue. So anytime you see red and blue on models, it's referring to the cardiovascular system, also known as the circulatory system. I would take either. Okay, it doesn't matter to me. Both of them are perfectly fine. So what is the job of the circulatory system? It's basically your roadway within the whole body. It transports material, regardless of what that material is, all over the body. Things that it transports include gases, carbon dioxide and oxygen, nutrients that you get from the food that you eat, glucose, amino acids, vitamins. Again, you get that from the food that you eat, a lot of it. Minerals. Anytime you hear the word minerals, that's the biology way of saying elements on the periodic table. So that would be calcium and sodium that are represented here. Those aren't the only 2. And then waste. To get the waste outside of the body, it will deliver it to for instance, the liver or the kidneys to get it out of the body. And then the organs involved are the heart and blood vessels. Blood vessels are going to be represented by red and blue. Now, this organ system, which is going to be letter D, includes the stomach, the liver, the gallbladder, the large intestine, small intestine. This is going to be your digestive system. The job of the digestive system is to break food down for absorption, and it's going to get absorbed into the circulatory system, and then to eliminate waste. So your digestive system wants to keep the good stuff and get rid of the bad stuff, and it separates it and puts it into the right place. So how am I going to ask these questions on the test? Well, I could give you this picture right here and say what organ system is represented by the picture. Or I could say, what organ system contains the gallbladder? And then you would say, okay, that's the digestive system. Or I could say, what organ system is involved in breaking food down for absorption? And then you would say digestive system. So the answer is pretty much going to be digestive system. And I would just ask you information about that, either in a picture or in words. And then your response would be digestive system. Okay. So this organ system contains organs such as the kidneys and the urinary bladder. This organ system is going to be the urinary system. Now, do not put excretory. Excretory is more of a broad term. Urinary is very specific. Okay, so your excretory is not the right answer. Urinary system controls water balance. So just like when you're dehydrated, your urine is going to be very concentrated, whereas if you're well hydrated, your urine is going to be more dilute. It removes waste from blood and excretes them. That's pretty much the job of the functional component of the kidney called the nephron. It is to get waste out of the blood, get it into the bladder, which is called urine, and then for excretion. The muscular system involves skeletal muscles and tendons. Now, tendons are a type of connective tissue that takes the muscle and attaches it to the bone. So that's the job of a tendon. It's represented in white in the model, where the muscle is represented in red. So anytime you see white, that's where the muscle is attached to the bone. So it is definitely involved in movement, and it helps maintain posture. The next organ system that we're going to take a look at is letter G, and on your labeling handout, and this includes cartilage, bone, and joints. I could also say ligaments on this because ligaments connect bone to bone. This is your skeletal system. It protects major organs. Remember, we talked about in class how the heart and lungs lie deep to the ribs, means they lie beneath the ribs, and the ribs' job is to protect them. Same thing with your skull. Your brain lies deep to the skull. Your skull bone protects the brain, the underlying structure. And it's also involved in body movement. So be careful because the muscle system is involved in movement, and so is the skeletal system. So that's not the only description I would give you. I would have to give you a little bit more because if I just said is involved in movement, I could mean either one. So I would have to say is involved in movement and protects major organs. That way, oh, okay, I'm talking about the skeletal system now. Okay. The next one, which is letter H, is going to contain organs such as hair, skin, and nails. This is the integumentary system. And what is the function of the integumentary system? It is basically your first line of defense. It is to prevent any pathogen or little, bad guy from getting into the body. Because if it doesn't get into the body, that means your immune system doesn't have to do anything. So if you can prevent it from even getting in the first place, that's the best. It aids in the production of vitamin D. This is actually the beginning of vitamin D production. It starts in the skin. Believe it or not, you can go outside. When the sun hits your skin, you make vitamin D. You start the production of vitamin D. So pretty cool. And the skin and hair and nails also contain sensory receptors for pain, touch, and temperature. Okay, the next organ system, again, it's green on the models. So you should be able to see these green vessels here. This is your immune and lymphatic system. Now, these two systems work so tightly together that you really can't say, okay, the immune system is this independently and the lymphatic system is this independently. They work so tightly together, it's collectively both. The immune part of the immune and lymphatic system is defending against pathogens because it contains white blood cells, and the lymphatic system returns fluid to the blood. So it also is where your white blood cells travel. So it gets into the lymphatic system and travels from point A to point B. So I know we said the circulatory system does that. Your circulatory system does transport materials, and it has a pump called the heart to push things around the body. Your lymphatic system definitely moves things around the body, such as white blood cells, also, but there's no pump. Okay. And it does return fluid to the blood. So when you've been like standing all day and your ankles are swollen, your lymphatic system pulls that fluid out of the tissues in your ankles and puts it back into the circulatory system. So that's a good functioning lymphatic system. This organ system right here involves the pituitary gland, the thyroid gland, pancreas, adrenal glands, testes, and ovaries. All of these, by the way, are glands, even though the pancreas didn't have the word gland or testes or ovaries. They're all glands. This is your endocrine system. We said previously that there were two organ systems involved in maintaining homeostasis. One of them was the nervous system, and it does so through the use of electrical signals. The endocrine system is the second one that helps maintain homeostasis. And it does so by chemical messengers that travel through the bloodstream called hormones. And those hormones are communicating with all the different parts of the body, helping maintain a nice, regular internal environment, homeostasis. The next one we're going to take a look at and split it into two separate organ systems. So we have first the male reproductive system, which is going to be represented by letter K on your handout. And it includes organs such as the epididymis, the testes, could also include the seminal vesicles, the prostate gland, the vas deferens. Its job is to produce sex hormones and gametes. Now, that's a pretty vague term because producing sex hormone and gametes could be either male or female because they both do that. So, the sex hormones produced by the male are going to be testosterone, and the gametes produced are going to be called sperm. So, the generic phrase is sex hormones and gametes, but when you get down into testosterone and sperm, then you're like, oh, okay, that's the male reproductive system. And the other job it does is it delivers those gametes, sperm, to the female. Now, the female reproductive system, which is going to be letter L on your labeling handout, it includes organs such as the mammary glands, the ovaries, the uterus. Notice the first bullet here. It also produces sex hormones and gametes. The sex hormones produced by the female reproductive system are going to be estrogen and progesterone, and then the gametes are going to be called eggs. So the job of the reproductive system for the female is it is to support the embryo until birth. So after fertilization occurs, after the sperm fertilizes an egg, you have an embryo, and that embryo is going to be implanted into the uterus, one of the organs of the female. And it's going to stay there until 9 months have passed. 9 feels, 10 months maybe. And then birth will occur. Now, once birth happens, once the baby is born, then the female will then produce nutrients for the infant called milk. So all of these are also functions of the female reproductive system. Now, you've got some exercises on the Moodle page to kind of help go over this. The next thing we're going to take a look at are looking at these organs that we just discussed. Let's find some of those in this model. Now, this model is available in the classroom. This is the model that you're going to be tested on as far as labeling certain organs. Okay. These are also organs that you're going to be responsible for knowing their location in the rat dissection. So we're kind of at the bottom of page 2 on your labeling handout. So letter A on the bottom of page 2 is pointing to this pink structure right here. This little pink structure right here. It sits kind of under the heart and lungs and above the liver. There's the liver right there. This is called the diaphragm. The diaphragm is a physical barrier between the thoracic cavity and the abdominopelvic cavity. So everything above the diaphragm is in one cavity called the thoracic cavity. Everything below the diaphragm is going to be in the abdominopelvic cavity. So it is a physical barrier between the two. So right here it says diaphragm separates the thoracic cavity from the abdominopelvic cavity. So above the diaphragm is going to be the thoracic cavity. Below the diaphragm is the abdominopelvic cavity. And we're going to talk about cavities here in just a minute. So in the thoracic cavity, because we're above the diaphragm, we have the lungs, and you do need to know the right lung from the left lung. Now, keep in mind the directional terms are patient's directional terms, right? Not yours. So you are looking at this person. It's kind of hard to see their eyeballs, but you're looking at them eyeball to eyeball. And so this would be on this side, the right lung, where on the other side will be the left lung. So on the test, if I were to put a sticker on that structure right there, the question would be name the organ that I'm pointing to. And then you would say left lung if you want full credit. Okay. Now, another question I could ask is I could put a sticker on this structure right here and ask you, what organ system is that in? So, what organ system is that structure in? Well, it's a lung, so it's one of the organs in the respiratory system. So, you see how I could ask the questions. I could either ask you to name the structure, or I could ask you to tell me what organ system it's in. So, my point is read the test questions. Don't just look at the sticker and assume you know what the question is asking. Because if the question says, what organ system is this in? And you tell me lungs, that's not the right answer. Yeah, I mean, it's on the lungs, but that wasn't what I was asking. So be careful. Read the question. I promise you have plenty of time. Okay, this structure right here is the heart. It lies between both the right and the left lung. So what organ system is this in? This is the circulatory system. Now we're going to the abdominopelvic cavity. The abdominopelvic cavity is everything that's going to be below the diaphragm. So this large, dark red structure on the right-hand side, kind of upper right-hand area of the person, so your upper right-hand area is going to be the liver. And it's a pretty big organ. You're going to see when we dissect the rat, it's huge. It's going to be very dark red. The liver's job is to help break down red blood cells, so that's why it's such a dark red color. Now, what organ system is the liver in? Well, pardon me, it's actually part of your digestive system. So it adds bile, which helps break down fats. The organ that sits more on the upper left hand, this is the left hand side of the person, the upper left hand side sits below the diaphragm. This is the stomach. Now, what organ system is the stomach in? Well, it's in the digestive system. So these are just little sample questions here. Letter F, we're now, sorry. When you look, we're on page 3 of the labeling handout. Sorry, I didn't do that. We did that when we went to letter D. I apologize. So letter E, letter D on the labeling handout was the liver. Letter E on the labeling handout was the stomach. So now we're on letter F, which is this yellow, bubbly looking like structure. It kind of looks like grape-like. It sits below the stomach. It is called the pancreas. Now, when you're going to find this on the rat, you're going to have to actually lift up the stomach to see it. It's not just going to be kind of sticking out like this. But this is the pancreas. Now, what organ system is the pancreas in? Tricky question because it's in both. It's in 2 different systems. It is part of the endocrine system because it secretes insulin and glucagon to help you work with your homeostasis of sugar. And it's also part of the digestive system because it secretes digestive enzymes to help break food down into the small intestine. So it's actually part of both. So if I were to tag this and say, tell me what organ system it's in, just pick one. Don't put both. Tell me, just pick one of them and you'll be perfectly fine. Now, this is a bad picture. I need you to make sure next time you guys come to class, you take a look at this model and you take a look at the organ that's over here to the left-hand side. It's going to be lateral to the stomach. Okay, there we go. There's an interesting word. Lateral to the stomach. It's the spleen. So it's kind of hard to see from this angle. So make sure that you look at that and make sure you know it's a dark red structure. It's actually the same color as the liver. But the spleen is going to be over there on the lateral side of the stomach. And this is in if you want to put lymphatic or immune, I'm good with either one of those. Okay. It helps break down red blood cells, but it also is a source of white blood cells kind of hanging out, waiting for a pathogen to show up. This gray structure, gray, brown, whatever color that is, all the way around, whoops, kind of got a little bit of muscle on that one, all the way around, this is all large intestine. Now, what organ system is letter H in? This is in the digestive system. Okay, this is right before it's going to be in the large intestine, right before it exits the body. And then all of this yellow material in here, this is the small intestine. And this again is in the digestive system. So food is going to go through the stomach. It is then going to enter into the small intestine. Then it will enter into the large intestine, and then it will exit the body. Okay. Now, looking at the torso models. So we have these torso models in the classroom. All of the guts, so to speak, have been removed. So you don't see the lungs and the heart anymore. You don't see all of the digestive organs. So all of that has been removed. We're on the bottom of page 3 of your labeling handout. So you should be able to see some structures once all of the basically the digestive stuff has been removed. So these two structures here, letter J, notice there are 2 letter J's on your labeling handout. The first letter J is going to be the right kidney, because remember, you're looking at the person eyeball to eyeball. So this is their right and their left. So the other letter J is going to be the left kidney. Now, kidneys are part of your urinary system. You also have this big blue blood vessel right here that's also towards the ventral side of the body, the back side of the body. This is called the inferior vena cava. It's a blue blood vessel. It is going to be carrying deoxygenated blood up to the heart. Okay, that's the direction the blood is flowing in that blood vessel. And then it is part of your circulatory system or cardiovascular system. That's letter K. And notice I did on the labeling handout, I put the word blue because, again, you can't see colors on that when you print that off. So that's why I put the word blue there. Now, obviously on the test, I don't have to tell you it's blue because if I tag it, it's blue. Letter L, and I'll tell you right here, it carries deoxygenated blood back to the heart. Letter L is going to be the red blood vessel. So it's labeled the red one on your labeling handout. It is going to be carrying oxygenated blood down to the lower part of the body. This is called the abdominal aorta, and it is also a blood vessel. So it's going to be located in the, or it's going to be part of your circulatory system. Okay, letter M is going to be in this area right here. Notice there is nothing right there. This is going to be the bladder or the urinary bladder. I don't care if you put urinary bladder or bladder. Either one is perfectly acceptable. And this is going to be in what system? The urinary system. Letter N. So we're going to be on page 3 of the labeling handout now. Letter N is pointing to the passageway. So we're really looking at 2 passageways here. We've got one passageway that's going to go from the mouth, and then the material is going to go in. And then we have the other passageway, which is going to go from the mouth, but it's going to go into the forward passageway. So one passageway is going to be for food, and the other passageway is going to be for air. So letter N is pointing to the esophagus, which is a passageway for food. It is a pinkish, beigeish, pliable passageway that is kind of flat. So it's not like always open. It's kind of flattened. And then when food goes down, it opens just, that one little section and kind of gets pushed down into the stomach. So if you follow that, you can see that it goes into the stomach. It is very hard to find on the rat because it sits behind, posterior to the trachea. So and by the way, it's in the digestive system, right? Because it's carrying food. Now, the passageway that sits more on the anterior side of the body, that's going to be the trachea. This is going to be letter O. It is in the respiratory system. So your trachea is a passageway for air. So if you think about it, your mouth can have either food or air in it. If it's food, it's going to go down the back pipe, which is going to be your esophagus. If it's air, it's going to go down the front pipe, which is going to be the trachea. And you can see that trachea is going to then enter into the lungs. Now, the other thing I want you to notice about the trachea is that it's rigid. It is going to have the consistency of like a vacuum cleaner tube with little ridges in there because it's always open. You never want the trachea to collapse, right? Because that's your air source. So it has cartilage in there, which holds the trachea open at all times. The esophagus, no cartilage. It's just muscular and it closes. It's always, it closes unless something's in there. Okay, so those are the structures that you need to know on that one. Now, while we're on here, we're going to go ahead. We're going to pause here and we'll pick up with body cavities in the next video.